Hello, welcome to ProEspresso Productions. Happy to have you here. As you might guess by the title of this video, today I'm taking a needless but highly entertaining journey through every level of this wonderful PS1 classic, and I'm taking you along for the ride. Crash Bandicoot was the second ever game I got my hands on at the puny age of 3 years old. I think I played a bit of Resident Evil 1 before this, or at least I watched an older sibling of mine play it. 3 cheers for irresponsible parents. I'm just kidding, I turned out alright, I think. Crash Bandicoot was the first ever game that Naughty Dog released for the PlayStation back in 1996, and it went on to be the 8th best-selling game ever released for the platform. Gran Turismo took the number 1 spot, which surprised me a little honestly. I thought it would have been Final Fantasy 7 or 8. Meh. So our main protagonist, Crash, has managed to wriggle free of the evil Dr. Cortex's clutches and winds up on Sanity Beach, our first level. Dr. Cortex is a typical evil mastermind who likes to experiment on all kinds of animals, so he's clearly a bit of a knob. The general premise of the entire game is that Cortex still has Crash's presumably smoking hot girlfriend, and we have to work all the way back up to Cortex just to reclaim his beloved beauty. Gameplay is quite simple, being a platformer. Jumping on stuff is a large portion of the gameplay, and the only other action available is a spin attack. Both of these actions can be used to take out enemies and destroy those baneful boxes. Crash and I have something in common, but I don't think his dislike of wooden crates comes from playing too much Beat Saber. Just for a bit of fun, I'll be rating each level on its difficulty out of 10. It'll be a relative scale just for this game, so the easiest level in the game will be a 1, and the hardest level will be a 10. I think that's all there is to say for a warm-up. Let's jump into the first level. Sanity Beach. As I mentioned, the bodacious Bandicoot begins washed up on the sandy shores of Sanity Beach. The first level keeps the main theme song rolling as the player is introduced to a few different types of boxes. The main theme of Crash is so ridiculously catchy that after playing it for just a minute, both my girlfriend and I were humming the tune repeatedly. It's a banger, mate. The boxes have a few different varieties, but nothing too insane. The question mark box here can contain a range of goodies, which are always predetermined by the developers, so there's no randomness here. More often than not, they contain multiple Wumpa fruit. Yep, you heard me. Not apples, not mangoes, Wumpa fruit. It's canon, I swear. If you grab 100 of these, you'll earn yourself an extra life. Speaking of extra lives, the question mark boxes can also hold them, along with bonus round tokens, but we can find out about that later on. Those other boxes I just refer to as jumpy boxes. They spit out 1 Wumpa fruit every time they're jumped on, up to 10 times, and then they break. They're pretty time consuming to deplete, so you'll probably see me just spinning my way through them most of the time. Just down the sandy path is the first enemy, easily disposed of by a jump on the head or a quick spin attack. If Crash makes contact with the enemy, he's going to die right now because he doesn't have an Aku Aku. Again, I'm not making random sounds with my mouth, it's what this little guy is called. He acts as a shield, tanking 1 attack. His effects do stack up, so if he's wooden and ordinary, it's a single layer, gold is 2 layers, and if you manage to hit a stack of 3, Crash will go temporarily invincible, destroying everyone and everything he touches. It only lasts for a short time though, so make it count. This first level demonstrates that very mechanic just a little bit later on. Now a platformer's pretty goddamn awful if there's nothing to jump over and onto, right? So naturally you'll find holes to hop over that will result in your immediate death if failed. Aku Aku won't save you from those. The X button by default is jump, using the PlayStation controls, and square is spin. A little further on we find another type of jumpy box. I call these stingy jumpy boxes because they don't give out any Wumpas. They can be bounced on indefinitely though, until you break them with your own spin attacks. They're always paired with another box that you can reach by jumping extra high or a large gap that requires a little extra height to traverse. As far as I know, the plain unmarked boxes contain a single Wumpa fruit pretty much every time. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. A few jumps and crabs later, the first level takes an upwards incline, introducing another Aku Aku in a box and an extra life crate. The crates will only give 1 life per level, so if you die and play through this section again, the life crate will become a question mark crate instead. If you're careless, like me, you can spin away the yummy Wumpas and even the extra lives if you're super reckless. Just thought I'd point that out. At the top of our climb we find a C box, shorthand for checkpoint, and I really don't need to explain their uses, do I? You're probably more interested in the third Aku Aku box right in front of it. Let me show you. That was embarrassing. Never said I was good at Crash. In fact, I'm actually far below average on the bell curve when it comes to platformers. I'm tragically awful, so don't expect any esports level Crash gameplay. As you can see, I don't need to spin or jump on boxes to break them, just let Crash rub his Aku Aku face on them and watch them break and shatter. The turtles here are a new enemy that can simply be spun away or jumped on to become a portable jumpy pad. There's no real use for that in this level, unfortunately. I'm sure you spotted that metal exclamation mark box too. Yeah, this one. Oh. I told you I'm bad. Well, these guys are basically switches. You can't destroy them in any way, but spinning or jumping on them will cause them to activate. They can do many different things, but most of the time they just cause more boxes to spawn in, signified by these white outlines. If you see these white outlines, you know there's gotta be a metal exclamation mark box somewhere in that level. Get hunting. Our exit is just ahead, but it is worth searching every area of a map for a couple of reasons. First, if you're like me and you suck really bad, you'll need all the lives and wampers you can get your furry little Bandicoot hands on. Secondly, there's a sub-objective to every level. Finish the level without dying, and collect every single box on your way through. This challenge is no joke, and can be difficult even on the early, easier levels of the game. Fulfilling that challenge will reward Crash with a shiny gem. The plain ones are simply collectibles, for now, but the coloured gems from the later levels unlock secret paths that are sometimes required to find every box in a level. It can be quite a puzzle to figure out what gem you need for what level. Just use the internet, trust me, it's not worth the hassle. With all that said and done, the first level is finished and we're on to the next. I give Insanity Beach a solid 1 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. Jungle Rollers. As we move inland from the beach, the terrain turns to jungle with an Aztec influence. The continuity between levels is actually very consistent for a platformer. It really feels like you're moving through that world map, which in itself is lusciously decorated. I really do love this game. Right at the very start we can spot a new type of crate, and one that will most likely kill you. The TNT crate is pretty apparently named, and when Crash jumps on these guys, they begin a 3-second countdown before going boom, destroying any crashes, boxes or enemies in the vicinity. Don't even try to spin them. You'll get no grace of a timer and the TNT will detonate immediately. It's just not a good idea. Let's take a second to appreciate how lavishly the environments are from a game from 1996. It aged so well because of the vibrant, contrasting colours and the cartoonish animation of Crash and the whole island. It still takes me to a happy place even 24 years later. Damn, I'm old. Jungle Rollers introduces some slightly trickier jumps which are set at angles, and some new enemies. Some, like this skunk, function in the same way as the crab, and you'll find that to be a common trait throughout. Lots of obstacles and enemies are inherently the same, but it's the style and design that prevent them from getting stale. Spin to win or just jump over the skunks. The great big rolling stones are not only defying the very laws of physics in their perpetual rolling, but also make for some cool obstacles, requiring some basic timing to overcome. This level in Crash, similar to most good games, introduces new mechanics or obstacles slowly, becoming progressively harder as you go. If you look for this in the levels throughout the video, you're almost certain to spot this effect in action. I've made sure to overlay the music from each level so you can hear how great it is. I bet it's mostly nostalgia, but every level has a perfectly fitting soundtrack. A quick Google search tells me it's Josh Mansell who's responsible for this jovial jolt of joyous jams. Thanks, mate. There's a fair amount to go over in the early levels, as it's when the game introduces all of the moving parts that make up the gameplay experience. Here we can see another feature, bonus tokens. Collect 3 of these tokens to be transported away to a secret stage where you'll have a single chance to test your skill for juicy rewards. There's another new enemy in this level too, the snappy plant? Whatever. Just time your spins right on these guys or they'll take a bite out of you first. You can actually spin foes into one another if you get the angle right too. You can see I use the skunks to do this in some places. Totally on purpose, of course. The bottomless pits become more frequent and are interlaced with rolling stones, demanding slightly more attentiveness from the player throughout the level. And as we progress, we can clearly see an escalation of challenge. It's a mark of good game design to have a difficulty curve and not a difficulty spike pit. If I stop it right here, you can see this tiny gem, right? That's a sign that we need a colour gem to access a secret area that may contain more boxes or maybe lives. Who knows? It's all part of the mystery. As we get closer, this gem fades from existence, waiting for a later return with the right coloured jewel. In this video, I won't be getting 100% completion with every single gem, but I will make sure I get the secret keys which you need for the secret levels. I can hardly say we're overanalyzing every single level if I left 2 in the dark now, can I? Towards the end of Jungle Rollers, we see an example of what I was talking about before. Spinning the TNT here will hurt, peeling away a layer of Aku Aku, or just killing Crash outright if he's not wearing protection. It's all in the timing, and the TNT counts towards getting the gem at the end, so be careful. For once, I don't fail myself and I get it right. Go me. Almost as if it's a reward, the 3rd bonus token is just ahead. These levels are set in the fluffy, bright sky and are fairly easy to complete. You'll get a chance to save your game in these too, and I don't think there's actually another way to save your progress, but if you're using an emulator, like I am, if I really need to leave the game, I'll just make a quick save state. Not everyone had a memory card for their PlayStation back in '96, so the game does offer passwords to jump to certain levels, which was a nice consideration for the time. Just one more thing here, if Crash's girlfriend is literally right here at the end of the bonus levels, Is that it? Can we just end the game now? I demand an in-depth lore explanation please, Naughty Dog. Just a few more jumps and a couple of spins later, Jungle Rollers is done, earning a 2 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. The Great Gate. Oh man, I love the tiki influence on this level. All bright and vibrant colours make it a right treat for the eyes. I think I once heard a youth use the term Cheddar Gorge to describe something of considerable visual appeal, so today I shall use that descriptor. This level is Cheddar Gorge, mate. The metal boxes work the same as the wooden ones, by the way. You can't break them by any means, not even TNT. One of the first obstacles this level presents is smart use of the metal jumpy boxes, creating a repeatedly bouncing death trap that requires good timing to get through unscathed. Unless, of course, you're sitting on a level 3 Aku and you just refuse to give a single shit about the prospect of danger. Good times. This level also likes to make you think a little bit about your actions before you execute them. You can rob yourself of boxes and goodies if you're too hasty. It's life here, for example. If you're not in super mega level 3 beast mode like I am right now, you won't be able to get this box without using previous boxes as springboards. Watch out for that, it will get you. A mechanic exclusive to this level is the wooden peg thing that spins around to form a platform when attacked. After a short period it will reset to its vertical position, so like most things you gotta be quick here. The theme of this level is to ascend over the Great Gate blocking your way, so there's plenty of vertical climbing via jumpy boxes, chaining into one another just to be awkward. Speaking of awkward, these monkeys like to roll around in unpredictable ways and they can only be spun to death when stationary. Spun to death? That sounds really strange on the tongue. I mentioned back in the first level that turtles can be jumped on to flip them into a jump pad, right? That's exactly what you can do here for an extra Aku. You're not going to be able to reach this if you mindlessly attack the poor guy. These giant, slightly disturbing looking spike pillars provide a timing challenge by violently thrusting back and forth intermittently. How very phallic. I really like the design on the wooden walkways here, by the way. Anyone else like that? I'm a bit of a sucker for the wooden design anyways. There are some later levels that I love purely for their aesthetic. Speaking of aesthetic, get a load of this guy and his surfboard. Once again we're in super Aku mode, but this enemy is pretty annoying as he tries to shove Crash off the edge into the depths below. They even occasionally defend from being jumped on by blocking with the board. Slightly irksome, but fairly easy to jump over and ignore really. About halfway through, the Great Gate introduces slippery patches of moss on slopes. Crash slowly slips downwards if the player doesn't work to counter the sliding motion. This of course means that Crash moves slower on these particular surfaces when moving up an incline, so keep that in mind. Repeatedly jumping does help. The final surprise this level has to offer is these indecisive fire pits. They seem to ignite with vicious flames every second or so, adding another timing element to the collection of obstacles. The game continues to use combinations of all the established challenges throughout the level. The bonus level is a little bit more lucrative, providing some extra lives. Luckily, the boxes and bonus rounds do not count towards the total needed to get a gem. A few more thrusting pillars later, the end portal is in sight, with the visible sign of a yellow gem taunting what might lie beyond. I'm pretty sure it's just a few more boxes and a little climby bit. I'll happily give the Great Gate a 3 out of 10 for difficulty based on the combination of these timing mechanics. Boulders. While I may not love this particular level's camera angle, I can definitely appreciate how it shakes up the established norms of gameplay. In the previous levels, you're always running away from the camera or with a sidewards view. In Boulders, it's time to run into the camera. Indiana Jones, eat your heart out. Crash has got this boulder escaping down to a T. Accompanied by a high-tempo tribal beat, the goal here is to run the hell away as fast as you can. Obstacles now have to be traversed with a very real pressure as the giant boulder nips at your heels. Every checkpoint provides a momentary point of relief before another giant rock picks up the slap of the previous. Eventually, the end portal is reached and the spherical slab of earth falls into a deep dark pit. Naturally, these levels don't have that many boxes and no side areas, so providing you don't die, picking up the gem here is a pretty simple affair. Boulders gets a solid 3.5 out of 10 due to the pressure from the boulders, however the obstacles themselves flow quite easily, allowing the actual action to be fairly intuitive and simple. Upstream. This level has a really light-hearted ambience right off the bat, which I can easily get along with. As you might have guessed, Crash is moving upstream, hopping on lily pads and floating leaves to reach the end. The lily pads like to fall away after being stood on, and Crash will immediately die on contact with water, regardless of any Aku power. The moving leaves stay afloat no matter what though, so they're a safe bet. It's the first time the game introduces moving platforms, requiring both timing and precision now. It's a definite step up in demand from the player. These floating leaves are often chained together along with a new obstacle, these snapping plants. The red and green ones only snap when they sense something in their clutches, however there is a second or two delay before the jaws snap. The grey ones chomp in a regular rhythm, requiring some forethought when these obstacles are tied together into a single challenge. Bonus round is a bit trickier too, needing some decent timing to get all of the boxes. Remember, it's not mandatory to get every single box in the bonus level as they don't count towards the gem total. During Upstream, there's also the occasional hostile fish that will leap over pathways. You've got to keep an eye out for them because they can ambush you rather unexpectedly. Upstream is a really short level, but it's one of my favourites in terms of environmental detail. It's so lush and the water trickling makes for a nice audio underneath the main track. Upstream clocks in at a 3.5 out of 10 due to timed obstacles being linked together with fatal water on all sides of the paths. Papu. The very first boss, Papu is the definition of a warm-up boss, and he is staggeringly easy compared to the rest. His health bar, like all bosses in the game, is divided into segments that must be depleted one by one. This super chubby tiki man isn't happy that Crash has invaded his hut and seeks to swat Crash like a blue bottle flyer. Fortunately for us, he's slow and pitiful, requiring a simple 3 hits to defeat. Papu likes to swing his club around a bit and then go for a huge overhead slam. During the brief pause after the big slam, he's open to an attack. Only one chunk of health bar can be depleted at once, so the whole fight must be played out properly. You can easily cheese this fight by standing on Papu's chair and simply moving when the overhead slam is inbound. It's a very simple fight, but introduces how bosses work without being a boring tutorial. 2 out of 10 for difficulty, Papu. Sorry mate. Rolling stones. Most stages in Crash Bandicoot come in pairs, not necessarily one after the other, but spread out a little bit. This level, Rolling Stones, shares a similar theme with the second level of the game, Jungle Rollers. It provides almost identical obstacles and enemies, but the layout is designed to be more difficult, allowing assets to be used more than once in a single stage. Considering the quality of the animation and designs, that's more than fine by me. The game does its best to highlight how useful slinging enemies into objects can be. Using their snappy plant as a projectile against a wall of boxes is very effective, but naturally I screw it up. It's surprising that I can put a pair of socks on without causing a nuclear incident, really. The obtusely oscillating rolling stones arrive in pairs this time around, narrowing the window in which Crash can pass through safely. The platforming in general becomes much less generous and more hazardous. We also discover a different type of bonus token in Rolling Stones. It's the ugly mug of Cortex's top scientist bloke, Nitrous Brio. These bonus stage tokens don't appear very often, only in 4 levels in fact, but the levels they take Crash to are exceptionally difficult. Completing these is purely for bragging rights and the extra lives, as finishing these fiendishly tricky levels fulfills no official completion requirement. I'm not joking about the difficulty either. These bonus levels are a solid 10 out of 10 on our difficulty scale. Here, watch my brave attempt at this bonus level. I'm pretty sure they made them mandatory for the gem in the remastered trilogy. Good god. To salve the sting of the Nitrous Brio rounds, we've got our good old regular bonus rounds in this level, lauding us with the usual boatload of whumpers. No lives this time though. Come on game, don't be cheap. Rolling Stones throws a few falling pillars into the mix, but apart from that, it's business as usual. If I had to include the bonus level as part of finishing Rolling Stones, it would be a solid 10, but as far as it goes, it barely scratches a difficulty rating of 4 out of 10, and I still think I'm being a little bit too generous. Hog-wild. There's no usual business here though. Hog-wild is one of those novel levels that's over in a flash, but is super memorable. I guarantee if you've played this game, you remember this level. You might remember most of them, to be fair, they're all so well designed, but any level featuring Crash, a warthog, and some suggestive looking eyebrow movements gets extra novelty points. No matter how good you are at platformers, this level only has one speed. The runaway hog speeds along this path and Crash holds on for dear life, only able to steer left and right with a jump to get over obstacles. Charging through the boxes with the hoggy tusks is enough to break them and claim whatever is inside, but one contact with a spiky totem or a dancing surfboard tribal bloke will send you right back to the last checkpoint. No Aku Aku here. This level can be finished in little as 1 minute if you don't cock it up, and some of these timings can be made a little bit awkward when dodging the nibble natives. Due to its short length, I'm going to give Hog-wild a 3 out of 10. It's not long enough to cause any real difficulty. Native Fortress. Just like Rolling Stones uses the same theme as Jungle Rollers, Native Fortress is set in the same theme as The Great Gate. Fortunately, that's a theme I'm still very much in favour of. There's no novel mechanics introduced throughout the level, but the combinations of existing tricks and traps are much more sinister. Right away, the old trick of watch what you're spinning or you'll miss out shows up. Maybe Naughty Dog are trying to teach us a lesson about wildlife conservation. Just jump on the turtles, don't kill them. The difficulty spikes on this level are most notable in a few places. First off, I'd say the climbing sections with these spinny wooden things require a lot more dexterity and precise placement. The second series of these things places extra womba fruit and even an Aku Aku mask off to the sides, tempting some extra risk if the player is feeling so inclined. A few extra womba isn't going to make a whole lot of difference, and frankly it's not worth your time. I'd definitely grab the mask though, you can never have enough Aku. The bonus round is a bit sneaky too, hiding an extra life box just out of frame, making you use the stingy jumping box to reach it. It's pretty obvious there's something up there as the box has no other use and the gap is easily passable with just a normal Crash jump. Back in the level, even if Crash falls, it's not a massive deal as there's no hazard at the bottom of the fall, but it does take up more time. The timings of these disturbingly thrusty spiky things are closer together, and if you're after every box, Native Fortress makes it all the more difficult to get everyone without dying. Those intermittent fire pits are much more frequent too, sometimes set in sequences of 3 or even more, a very tight window of opportunity indeed. As much of a tricksy false hobbit Native Fortress can be, there's a very handy and borderline broken shortcut you can take. Just after the second spinny climby bit, there's a flat piece of fence just behind Crash. It's not just an aesthetic choice to improve the feng shui, it's a proper part of the world geometry and you can jump right over. You can even run along the level behind the fence, cutting out arguably the trickiest part of the level, and to make things even better, there are no missed boxes and no backtracking required. I genuinely thought I'd broken the game as a youngster, and this little trick brings me happy nostalgic memories. Nostalgia. When the shortcut time is up, simply hop back over the fence for the final portion of the level. A few turtles, monkeys, fire pits, and spiky boys later, Crash arrives at another climbable fence section. This time though it's no shortcut, it's just a single hidden life. The difficulty is further increased by mixing enemies directly into the slippy, mossy slopes. It's not massively difficult, but it's certainly getting up that curve at least a little bit. The pacing is completely spot on throughout, and I can't think of a level that really has a massive variance in toughness compared to the previous one. One final spinny tower later, our escape portal is waiting for us. For whatever reason, we get 4 free lives just waiting at the end. Maybe it's the game's way of congratulating us for finishing the first island. Well hey. Native Fortress, you get a strong 4.5 out of 10 on ye olde scale of difficulty. Moving on to the second island now, and perhaps my least favourite. I say least favourite because it's like choosing a favourite child. I love them all, just in different ways. I'd say the second island is like the middle child. Not exceptional in any particular way, but a real solid all-rounder. I think if it had a name it would be something like Roger, or Stanley. Up the Creek. Up the Creek is the second iteration of Upstream, a level I'm fond of for its atmosphere and colourful flowing river. Just like every second version in its theme, there aren't any new dangers to be found, just existing ones rearranged in a more devilish manner. Moving platforms and snappy plants are in greater abundance throughout, along with deadly flapping fish jumping between them. Although there are some questionable collisions on some of the plant beasties, this level shouldn't be too much of an issue if the player can get through the levels like Native Fortress. It's more like a warm-up, although this particularly treacherous run over lily pads is definitely daunting. The bonus level is a real first-time test for jump precision though. You've got to be spot on bouncing between boxes or you'll do what I did. Up the Creek is all about momentum. Just keep going forward and don't stray to the sides of the paths and you're all good. A nice 4 out of 10 for you, Up the Creek. Ripperoo. This guy is an annoying little shit, both in gameplay and persona. Some people love this guy, but I can't wait to lay waste to his insane babbling with some extra thick TNT. You can't directly attack Ripperoo, the blue kangaroo, but must instead use these conveniently placed big TNTs to do him damage. You can see he has 3 health points and each one must be depleted by timing a TNT detonation so it explodes next to him, while also avoiding the harm yourself. For each of his lives, he has a set pattern that he'll repeat over and over. It's just a matter of watching for the pattern, predicting where he'll be in roughly 3 seconds, and not cannonballing yourself into the water while doing so. His first formation is a simple 3-tile jump in a rough arrow shape. The second is a diamond pattern across the full range of platforms, and the final one is a full triangle. It's surprisingly harder than it looks, but the TNT has a pretty large hitbox in both activation and detonation. So if you're having issues, just spam the TNT, eventually you'll get lucky and it'll cop a fat explosion. Blue Roo gets a 4 out of 10. The Lost City. This level provides us with a brand new setting and one I adore. This tribal temple theme is drenched in the dusk light of a setting sun and has a banging music track to top it all off. Onto the level itself. Right from the start we're given a free Aku Aku mask, which is probably a sign the difficulty is about to step right up. To the left of the starting area we're taunted with a few boxes behind a bastion of unbreakable metal crates. Getting over these has a couple of methods. Either jump from the slightly elevated position in the tunnel entrance, or bend your way around the side like I do here. It's a bit more awkward to jump this way, but it's the only way I've ever done it. As much as you're tempted to use the stingy jumping box to get back over, you've got to break that bad boy to get the gem if you want it. Just come back the same way you got in. So what trials does this level bring us? Tons, actually. Many are traditional platforming threats that have a crash coat of paint on them, and they fit in perfectly, while others are dangerous enemies you have to deal with in a very specific way. The first you'll encounter are these wall segments that just suddenly jut out to push Crash off the edge and shave off a life. Fortunately, they always activate in a set rhythm, so it's just a matter of patience and observation, two virtues I distinctly lack. These little green reptile dudes can only be removed by jumping on them, and attempting to spin them will cause Crash to fly off faster than me when I decline an invitation to a family gathering. These bats are also a real bitch. They come in pairs and are usually spread out along a lengthy stretch of level. Between the pair of bats flies a long stream of baby bats that will continuously spawn over and over until you take out the large stationary ones. They are a real pain in the arse, asking you to duck and dive between waves of blind beasties. Are bats actually blind, or did I just make that up? Anyway, they're placed pretty strategically to be the biggest pain in the arse possible, and taking both the bats out feels better than finding that bonfire in Dark Souls just after you beat Ornstein and Smough. Ornstein? Ornstein? Ornstone? Make sure you don't miss all the little boxes hidden in the alcoves too. They can be surprisingly easy to miss. What's also easy to miss is some of the goodies hidden on top of these moving walls. They're usually extra lives or a bonus token, which you might want, you know. It can make for some tricky platforming, but that's what the whole level's about. Rapid, precise, repeated jumps between fast moving and temporary platforms. Look at this section here, like slabs popping in and out of the walls like clockwork, forcing Crash to make these jumps in a set rhythm with no time to dawdle. It's definitely a bit of a step up in challenge, although not too mental. Like I said, the difficulty curve is pretty immaculate in Crash Bandicoot. Halfway up this platform is a metal switch box hovering tentatively over a roaring fire pit. This switch calls a few boxes into existence just at the peak of this climb, and that's also where we run into another new nasty foe. The red prehistoric predator likes to hop around and cause a fuss. Spinning him doesn't work, just like the more horizontal green gecko. You can either jump over him or on him to surmount the struggle. Just make sure you time it right, as he's got a bit of a habit of jumping into you right as you're also jumping into him, and he'll always win. One of the more awkward enemies for sure. Walking slightly into the backdrop to grab those boxes, we find the third Nitrous Brio token, and we steel ourselves for another brutally hard bonus level. This one actually gives you time to assess the situation before dealing with it, and somehow, by the grace of all that is good in the world, I somehow completed this one. Although I missed one life box. Not worth it. Back in the real world, we can see how annoying some of the enemy placement is. Of course, it's entirely by design, but an enemy you can't spin jumping between segmented platforms like this is evil. Not to mention the rotating bridges and tricky bat bits. Just be patient and take a single action between each wave of bats if you're struggling. Even the normal bonus level doesn't relent, piling tons of bouncy boxes together, making this a very strenuous exercise in counting to 10. I'm getting there, but the most I can do is 6.5 right now. The Lost City continues to throw nasty trap configurations laced with jumping enemies until the end portal is finally reached. A hearty 5 out of 10 Lost City, nice one. Temple Ruins. If the Lost City had a good atmosphere, then the Temple Ruins has an amazing atmosphere. The level is shrouded in impenetrable darkness, broken only by the faint fires in the background and the structures Crash stands on, for obvious gameplay reasons. Everything in this cavernous space echoes and reverberates in such a convincing manner, considering the age of this game. This is up there with the best levels in the game, there is no doubt about that. The music for this stage makes me feel like we're tiptoeing through a cursed place that we're really not meant to be in. The premise is supported by the style of the trap design being literal Tomb Raider-esque spike traps, falling platforms and sneaky serpents. Those falling platforms give a hefty drop when you first jump on them too. It's a nice indication that they're far from a safe resting place. It's always nice when games give you a warning if you're looking close enough. The actual platforming isn't too tricky, and as long as you keep to a solid rhythm and be patient when your landing pad is moving around a bunch, you'll be fine. The fire pits make a return, but they really aren't quite as bouncy this time around. Check this out though, I like these a lot. I don't really have anything to say about it, I just like how they look. I can't not mention the crash sandwich makers either. Bandicoot pate. Let's stop and take a look at this for a second. What's with the random wumper just floating in midair? Yeah, that's pretty easy to miss, right? I love hidden stuff like that, especially when you don't find it on the first time through and then facepalm when you realise you missed 36 boxes. Oh, yeah, there's some giant spiders too, but they aren't even a minor threat at this point. Just spin or jump. Remove them from the equation. The bats though, they're still around and they are still a royal pain in the arse when you're trying to get through those smashy tunnels. It's what I call them because I'm a 26-year-old adult. Smashy tunnels. Definitely one of the coolest looking and sounding levels in the whole game, and the bar for that is already pretty high. I'll give Temple Ruins a solid 5 out of 10 in difficulty. Some of the jumping can be at odd angles, and the overlaying of traps and obstacles is getting slowly more intricate and dense. Road to Nowhere. On second thought, maybe I need to change my island preferences. The second island completely knocks it out of the park in terms of new and novel game design. I honestly can't decide which is my favourite, they've all got such great content. First world problems, am I right? I mean, just look at Road to Nowhere, from the black depths of the previous level to this mountainous icy trek. We can even see Cortex Tower in the distance, which is the third island. Road to Nowhere is going to be a tick higher on the meter of difficulty, I'll tell you that much. Safe platforms are scarce, and even when they are, they're made of super slippery ice and have some questionable collision detection. I'm starting to think these issues are due to my emulation of the game rather than the game itself. I don't remember any of this stuff happening when running on the PS1 natively. As if the haphazard handiwork of the bridge builder wasn't bad enough, they also have a wildlife problem with these rabid boars. They sprint up and down sections of the bridge completely disregarding gravity. What is it with things forgetting physics exist, eh? These beasts really hate you too. They'll turn around mid-charge just to gore or crash. And if that wasn't bad enough, just look at some of these parts. God, nah mate. You even have to abuse poor little turtles just to get across some really huge gaps. Now I know what a few of you crash veterans are thinking. Oh my god, ProEspresso, you scrub, just run along the roads like everyone else. And yeah, I mean you can do that and circumvent every obstacle in the entire level, but I do like to try and do things properly now and then. Plus I always seem to glitch through the ropes and fall to my untimely death, which sucks. I'm pretty sure I tried to do it on another level and I'll show you that when I get to it. Even the bonus levels cut us no slack, resembling a Nitrous brio bonus round more than a nice fluffy cloud one. That's some major TNT technique. Road to Nowhere does not f around. 6 out of 10. Boulder Dash. At last, we're at the second part of Rock Retreat Simulator 1996. It's as much as you can expect from the second round of boulders. The obstacles naturally become more sophisticated and you've really got to be on your toes to avoid a deadly drop or to avoid slowdown that can result in Crash becoming entirely two-dimensional. This level is so simple that I'm finding it really hard to write about. There's a boulder, and then there's a Bandicoot, and it's all over in a couple of minutes. Still a better love story than Twilight. 5 out of 10 difficulty. Sunset Vista. The Lost City Part 2. More bats, more bashing bricks, more Bernie bowls, more bouncing Bothrops. Just forget that Bothrop is a kind of snake, okay? Alliteration is really hard. Some of the timing windows on Sunset Vista are absurdly narrow. Just look at this one with the fire pit and the bats. The only way I could make it through was to somehow spin the entire wave of bats away. The sequences of pushing blocks and temporary platforms become more and more hazardous as we go, not forgetting goodies hidden in the background just like before. The speed of the platforms is faster too, mixed in with the bats to make for the ultimate pain in the arse. I'm not even ashamed to say I died a good amount on this level, even more so than some late game levels. Maybe I just got good, but keep it real guys, that's not likely. There's a reason the video recording for this level is 11 minutes long rather than the average 3 minutes. I do get through eventually though, even if it does take the help of a stream of bats to help me. A quick reminder that I am horrific at platform games. Something this level has that is particularly worthy of mention is this bad boy. Yes, it's a normal metal switch box, but once you bounce off the back of the red dino, some boxes spawn in that contain... Yeah, that's new, right? It's a Cortex bonus level token. Once you trudge through enough of these demonic obstacles this level has set out for you, you'll find all 3 of these and get taken to a pretty tough bonus round. I'd say the difficulty of this particular one is somewhere in between a Nitrous Brio round and a more difficult ordinary one, although when placed alongside the relatively high difficulty of Sunset Vista, it's about on par. You're going to want to finish these Cortex rounds at all costs, for at the end holds a very special reward. It's a secret key to a secret extra level. Nice. I'm going to leave these extra levels for the very end of the video, but I haven't forgotten about them, don't worry. By some bloody miracle, I managed to get the key first time around. If you screw it up, you have to play through the entire level again and then finish the level to keep the key. It's a bit of a bitch, but it makes getting it the first time all the more sweet. The ordinary bonus round isn't anything special, even more so now the Cortex round is done. Just break all the boxes and sequence, hit that one TNT and run to the end, allowing the chain reaction to take care of the rest. The remainder of Sunset Vista is a daunting affair, but we are treated to this rich and purple-red sunset at the end. You still got it, Crash. This is about as large of a difficulty spike as you're going to find, and Sunset Vista shoots right up to a 7 out of 10. Koala Kong. Bringing beefy brawn in buckets, this bear-like brute blasts his bulging biceps boastfully. Koala Kong crushes concentration curls like cheesy chips. He hurtles huge hunks of heavy hurdles homing homeward. The delightful dude dutifully dodges detonating dynamite, diverting debris directly destined for the defiler, dashing the demonstrating dunderhead definitively. Thus, the tragic tale of the tall titan trails to termination, therefore trending 3 out of 10 on the threshold of trickiness. We're on the final island where some of the most unique and interesting levels lie in wait. The shift to industrial and man-made themes is strong on the 3rd island, as after all, it is home to Cortex's empire. Roll on the first level. Heavy Machinery. As I said, quite an aesthetic shift. The tropical jungles and tribal temples have given way to a cold, gritty, factory-like setting with robotic enemies, ventilation pipes and toxic ooze leaking from every crack. The first enemy in sight is some sort of observation drone that keeps its lens keenly focused on Crash at all times. They're easily taken care of with a simple spin. There's also some sort of robotic crab thing that is basically cannon fodder for Crash at this point, but these floaty, spiky boys are irritating as hell. Nothing short of an invincible Aku Aku will take these guys out while avoiding damage. Naturally, they're placed in the most inconvenient of locations, needing some good timing and a bit of forethought before blindly rushing in. These new enemies are mixed between hot and cold pipes, contributing to the industrial scene. The cold ones are totally safe to stand on, but as you might expect, the dangerous looking red ones, they're hot as f***, mate. Don't touch them. Your ordinary falling platforms and tricky TNT combinations are found aplenty in these later levels, but by now you've likely got the hang of those. Not too far into the level, there's a tasty little secret that happens to hold a Nitrous Brio token. Where the gap between 2 spiky death boys are, drop down in between and you'll find a hidden stash in a few boxes and the said token, easily missable for sure. A little further along we start to see some moving tracks pulling Crash in one direction or another. It provides another factor to consider when ducking and diving between scalding hot pipes and tricksy tracking camera drones. As we descend downwards we encounter one of my favourite perils. It's probably nothing amazing to someone seeing this for the first time, but these exhaust vents puff out scalding hot steam at set times. As a wee young gamer I'd have major issues with these, especially when they occurred with many in a sequence. The difficulty I had was determining when it was actually safe to walk on them, due to the somewhat vague dissipation of the steam, not to mention the straight up frightening sound they make upon activation. I love that noise now. It reminds me of a time I spent back on this level as a kid in much simpler phases of life. I'm an adult. The bonus round involves a lot more bouncy box jumping, and the Nitrous Brio round? Down here we can use some handy hyper bouncy platforms to grab Whompers and extra boxes. Be careful though, not every one of these is your friend and Naughty Dog used the established expectation against you in some places. Apart from the generous amount of lives being given out, there's not too much more to say about this level. Just enjoy the refreshing visual changes and roll on into the next level with a strong difficulty rating of 6.5 out of 10. Cortex Power. Another massively unique level with no comparison. This is one of the few non-boss levels that doesn't have a paired twin later down the line. It's even got a little cinematic introduction. Cortex Power is perhaps the most maze-like of all the levels, with multiple twisting, diverging paths dotted with dangers set out to deplete your 99 life stack. Aside from their gloopy green pits of toxic gunk, the hot and cold pipes also make a return, but with even more shocking adaptations. Boo! These bolts of electricity will pass from side to side every second or so, meaning the jump not only has to be well placed, as to avoid the wide pipes, but also well timed so we can forego the big zappy. The platforming in general has become even more precise and unforgiving, especially as this level requires some paths to be taken in reverse if you want all the boxes. Not to mention one mistake can lead to a full restart, as toxic waste pits show no mercy. We also get a sneak peek of the next boss in particular parts, a pistol-wielding potoroo, I think that's how you say it. He forces us to take cover as we push ground every time he pauses to laugh and mock us. What a dick. Again, being a fairly simple game in terms of mechanics, there's not a whole lot more to say apart from the ever-increasing difficulty. It's really getting up there now, and the awesome level design is the real MVP. I give Cortex Power a 7.5 out of 10. You've got the power. You know that song? No? I'm really old. If you can hear some clanging in the background, it's just the pet birds having a... I don't know what they're doing. Having a party? Generator Room. Another completely unique level with a gritty mechanical setting. This level plays a lot like Heavy Machinery, populated with camera drones and dangerous floaty spiky boys. The jumps are nefarious and the platforms often unsturdy. The music tracks are becoming downright oppressive too. These screens with Cortex face looms at you constantly, sadly being the brightest object in sight. The level has this intimidating vibe to all of it, as though the very setting itself wants to devour you whole. To top it all off, the player is treated to a huge gate right before the exit with that damn potoroo's face all over it. At least we know his name now, eh? I'm really struggling to find things to talk about in these levels. I mean, how many times can you say, Jumpy gets harder? The main point of discussion is the visual design, so I'll likely be talking more about those unless there's a significant mechanical novelty. Generator Room is an equally tight series of obstacles and ranks a 7.5 out of 10 on the how hard is it scale. Toxic waste. Dun dun dun. Oh boy. Perhaps the most linear level there is, but the most terrifying by a long stretch. Toxic waste is a precursor to the impending boss fight, and it's great. So simple, yet so effective. The entire level is a series of gauntlet runs, just like the Boulder levels, but this time you're charging into the threat. Pinstripe here will lob barrels down this straight path towards you relentlessly until you reach him, and spin him back a few dozen feet, or until Crash gets pasted like bread dough onto this cold and grimy floor. This level starts you out in a totally safe position so you can assess what's going on and identify the mechanics at play. I mean, it's not exactly complicated, but it's good not to be thrown immediately into the thick of things. The pathways get progressively longer, and there are safe areas off to the side if you need a break to compose yourself. As you go on, the barrels become more frequent. Although Crash can just jump over these yellow coloured ones, they just roll across the floor all chilled like. The ones you've really got to worry about... oh no, that noise. Good God, these things used to scare the absolute shit out of me. Crashing repeatedly into the metal floor, the brown bouncing barrels are the stuff of nightmares. Have you ever heard of that film about the killer tyre? Rubber, I think it was called? Well, if there ever was a sequel, this fucker would be the star of the show. The thing with these guys is it's really hard to know where the safe spaces are in between their bounces. They bounce in a very particular pattern, sure, but due to the perspective it's really tricky to know where to stand so you don't become instantly two-dimensional. There's not many Aku masks in this level either, so not many extra chances if you cock it up. At first, every third barrel becomes a brown bouncing one, but it's not long before every single barrel becomes the bouncing brown death. Just take a look at this bit here. The safe area from the bouncing barrels is blocked by this monstrosity of boxes. Think fast or die, rated 3+ for all ages. At least the bonus round provides a momentary respite from the smashing sounds that haunt my dreams. Although absolutely traumatic, not horrendously difficult due to its short length. Definitely fun though. Have a 7 out of 10, Toxic Waste. You dick. Pinstripe. Finally, the showdown. Time to get this persistent rodent off our backs. We've ended up in his office, which admittedly has a pretty cool backdrop, although I'm not sure that glass is radiation proof. I explained this guy's absolute insanity. To avoid a terminal case of lead poisoning, Crash must take immediate cover behind some of the furniture and only strike when it's safe to do so. Listen to me, I sound like a bloody driving instructor. Whenever Pinstripe takes a moment to clear a jam in his weapon or makes a mad dash across the room, it's time to get in that spin to win. As long as you're patient and wait to observe his repeated patterns and identify the times he's vulnerable, Pinstripe is a piece of cake. He even gives you the last hit in for free. Really cool theme in the office though. He obviously fancies himself as a mob boss, although I don't know who his minions would be exactly. I also learned that a potoroo is a subspecies of kangaroo and they're really quite tiny. Adorable in fact. What went wrong with you, Pinstripe? You're only tough enough for a measly 4 out of 10. The High Road. The big bad brother of the road to nowhere is tough from the very start. If you've got balls for it, there's even a completely hidden path directly backwards from the starting point, hiding some secret boxes. As I've said a billion times already, these harder versions of previous levels throw the same types of challenge at you, just in a more dastardly designed fashion. The margin for error on this level is really tiny, and although you can utilise the rope trick I mentioned earlier, it's never a surefire method, but then again, maybe I just suck really badly at it. It felt to me as though I would literally clip through the rope again and again, regardless of my placement, and it's more fun to play the level regularly anyway. You're definitely one of the harder levels, Mr. High Road. Take this 8 out of 10 difficulty badge with honour, you slippery, precarious numpty. Slippery Climb. One sec guys, I'm just getting my dictionary out, hold on. Obnoxious. Aha, here we go, obnoxious. Yep, there it is, right here, picture of this level. Nah, I jest. As challenging as this level is, it's well designed and has a genuinely interesting visual character. Look at all this rain just pouring off the rusty spikes and mossy cobblestone. It's pretty great. It really is a climb too, requiring exceptionally fine control and timing from even the most seasoned of Crash pros. It's not just tight on the timings, but the layout of the moving platforms gets really unorthodox and it throws me almost every time, or at least until I adjust to it. This one seems to move around 2 axes. It doesn't just rotate around a centre point, but the centre point itself also moves horizontally. It's a bit of a head messer for a simpleton such as myself. It's also hazardous, requiring many jumps in succession at a time before Crash's feet finally find a solid surface to rest on. Not to mention the stairs that are only sometimes stairs, the creepy locked up creatures reaching out of their cell windows to grab at you, and these crazy scientists lobbing explosive chemicals to keep you at bay. And of course there's a Nitrous brio bonus level in one of the hardest levels in the game. And of course I failed it almost immediately. Thank God they aren't mandatory. Don't ask me how, because I honestly don't know, but I got the gem on the first try on this level. I think I went into a trance and allowed an alien to telepathically control me in order to finish this. I should do that more often in life. I might be more successful. Slippery Climb is a shining highlight of Crash Bandicoot as a whole, but did you know there was a much more evil version that was cut from the game? Yep, it was called Stormy Ascent, and they put it back in the Insane trilogy for those sadists who want to have a crack at it. All this Crash Bandicoot talk has made me re-download the Insane trilogy as we speak. It's going to be fun to play that while I wait for YouTube to finish processing this video, though I should have about a week of free time. Get wrecked, YouTube. Slippery Climb, you deserve a solid 10 out of 10. You're up there with the most frustratingly bullshit levels this game has to offer. Take it and fuck off. Lights Out. What an excellent idea for this level. Who thought this up? Give them a gold star, damn it. Lights Out is fantastic. You might notice some things are a little dark upon loading in. That's kind of the point. For whatever reason, Aku Aku has become ethereal for this particular level, and every time you grab a mask, he lights up the whole environment with its ghostly light. Only for a short time, of course, before the entire level is plunged back into absolute darkness. If you take damage, your light is also extinguished and you're done for. When I say absolute darkness, I mean it. The mechanic makes it essential to push forward aggressively into obstacles you're unaware of, bottomless pits, red-eyed rodents and huge, deadly swinging blades that can make sinister swishing noises as they pass. Not to mention the gorgeous dark wood castle design that I am extremely fond of. This level is so memorable for so many different reasons, and it offers a really solid late game challenge too. It's so good. Love it. I love Lights Out. Back to the darkness, Lights Out, and take your difficulty rating of 9.5 with you. Jaws of Darkness. Jaws of Darkness is based on the previous temple ruins, and just as most levels, Jaws of Darkness is a well-paced level and is based on the previous temple ruins. It's quite a few notches up on the difficulty curve, but there isn't too much to mention really. Same obstacles, just in different arrangements, who'd have guessed. The second Cortex bonus level key can be found here, and there's also this secret. Both of these levels like to include little secrets like this for some reason, but apart from that, it's just a really solid level with a difficulty rating of about 7 out of 10 I'd say. Castle Machinery. The big brother of heavy machinery. As you might expect, it's set in the same rusty factory environment with at least 10 times as many hot red pipes. Again, a really good level, using an extra degree of movement towards the camera sometimes to throw you off. There's also really long stretches of those exhaust vents I love so much, and even a few places where the huge jumpy pads like to pelt you straight into scalding hot pipes. Yikes. There's plenty of fun to be had as this fast-paced level puts you through your platforming paces. Let's not forget this box challenge, mandatory for the gem if you want it. Castle Machinery feels like a compilation of all the skills learned from the side-on 2.5D levels of the game. It will definitely test your reflexes and crash control. Difficulty, 9 out of 10. Nitrous Brio. We've dealt with your shitty bonus levels long enough, Brio. It's time you met your crashing. All the bosses are memorable, but Nitrous Brio is especially so due to his multi-phase boss fight. Although one thing I'm not quite sure of is why they spawn you in this spot here, so close to him. The thing is, if you get too close, he'll threaten a chemical explosion to damage you and force you to back off. When you spawn in this location, he's already primed to do that attack, but how is the player meant to know this? If I was jumping into this boss fight for the very first time, I'd go straight for the attack and I'd lose an Aku mask in the process. I think I'd feel pretty cheated. The ideal spawn location would have been at the far end of the room, so you can see all the awesome visuals on display here. I love this boss room, especially when you can see the other parts of the world right out of his window. It looks a bit like the first island if I'm not mistaken. So, how do we take this literal egghead down? Well, in the first stage, he can only be damaged by hurting his pet green blobs. Yeah, I know it's a bit weird, just go with it. He'll throw a green potion that spawns them, and you either need to jump on them or spin them when they're in the air. Before I made this video, I used to think that jumping on them was the only way to dispatch them, and now I know different, this fight is a whole lot easier. After you take out the first green blob, Brio will throw red explosive potions, just like those dudes in Slippery Climb. Then he will throw 2 green blobs, then 2 red, then 3 green blobs, then many red. This signals the start of the second phase. Brio chugs down some of the potions he's been mixing and transforms into the goddamn Hulk. I'm not kidding, look, it's the Hulk. Luckily, it's ridiculously easy to beat this titan. Simply stand on the large slabs of rock that have fallen from the ceiling and jump on his oversized head when he draws close. Easy peasy. You can even rebound off his head directly onto the next fallen slab if you want those extra style points. This is where Devil May Cry got its influence from. Fun fact. After all your build up, Brio, you're nothing more than a not so difficult 4 out of 10. Get good. The Lab. The final obstacle between Crash and Cortex. It's dramatic, right? Good thing it lives up to the expectation then. If I worked in a lab like this, I don't think I'd last a week. Not only does it violate every single law in the history of the Health and Safety Executive, but every single door is set on a timer that can only be activated by making seriously hard kinetic impact with a large steel box. All jesting aside, this level is tough, but it is great. It acts as a final benchmark for the player before the final boss with its unusual platforming tasks that can be a real pain in the arse to get right. The lab is basically a series of mini timing challenges based on the activation of these switches I mentioned a second ago. You can see from the footage on screen how finely you need to time their activation to ensure safe passage between mad electric-powered scientists, dangerous yellow goops, and electric Apple AirPods? Seriously, what are those? And get a load of this sneaky little shit, hiding a TNT in a stack of boxes. Come on mate, you're just being harsh for the sake of it now. It even establishes a safe norm by having the exact same box structure just before it contain a safe metal box switch, which is something you actually want. They pulled the old bait and switch on us boys. They got us good. And don't get me started on these electric science blokes. Take a look at this, they go bzzz, and then they're safe to hit, right? Wrong. You have to wait until their entire body is no longer illuminated, not just when the sparks go. This drove me bloody mental for the longest time when I was a kid. I know better now, but Crash Bandicoot PTSD. Okay, how about this, lab? I give you a 10 out of 10 for difficulty, you pay for my therapy sessions. Deal? Great. Cheers. The Great Hall. Full of mystery, full of anticipation. What could await us in the Grand Hall? 2 jumps and we're finished. I kid you not. Jump, jump, Done. 0 out of 10, buy on sale. Next. Nah, come on, I know what this place is for. If you've collected every single gem in the game, they all string together here so you can access the ending early. I think it might actually be a unique ending altogether, but it's been so long since I did the whole lot, I truly cannot remember. Still 0 out of 10 though. Dr. Neo Cortex. Here we are, the gladiatorial showdown with this animal testing f***wit. Cortex doesn't have the balls to fight us on fair ground, so he's hovering around in his trashy little hovercraft, blasting fancy coloured projectiles at us. The backdrop is super nice here, the Cortex tower burning in the background as we have our epic duel to the death. Why the tower is on fire, I couldn't tell you. Crash just calmly passed through these levels, not causing any critical damage to the infrastructure as he went. The mechanics of this boss fight can be a little unintuitive from the start. The projectiles Cortex fires at Crash are presumed to be dangerous, as most bosses tend to be, but in fact the green ones are your friends. They are the only ones that can be deflected back at Cortex with a spinning attack, causing him damage. Why Cortex would allow such a massive vulnerability, who knows, but it's there. The purple ones he fires right at you, and the blue ones sweep slowly from side to side in various patterns. It can get a little hectic, that's for sure. There are a few phases where you need to stack up multiple green blobs before Cortex takes damage, but the fight is simple enough, providing you can keep track of all the blue blobs swiping across your screen. Once it's done and dusted, Cortex crashes and burns in a pleasing manner, and Crash gets his basic bitch back. I hope it was worth it, Crash. She's twice your height. I guess you're into that. 6 out of 10. The couple fly off into the sunset aboard Cortex's blimp, and let's face it, he's not going to need it anymore, and the credits roll. Bish bash bosh, job's done. Oh, but wait a second, we're not quite done yet, we've got those secret levels. Whole Hog. Naughty Dog decided that one hog riding level simply wasn't enough. Whole Hog is immensely difficult with tough to predict timings on these surfboard dudes and some seriously long jumps, needing the use of what looks like a giant drum to bounce over the chasms. It took me a few shots to get this level done and dusted, and it's good to see the hog riding gimmick make one more return before we put this game to bed. At least a 7 out of 10, no question. Fumbling in the dark. I am so pleased another level like Lights Out is in Crash Bandicoot. It's such a legit idea that you could probably make a whole game out of it. Fumbling in the dark keeps the brutally tough difficulty of the previous level and adds some extra complexity because why not? It's an optional bonus level, go mental. It's got one of those secret sections right at the level start, hiding some lives and some Aku ghost masks. The ghost versions don't stack in these levels, by the way, the timer just resets every time you grab one. The jumps are longer and more risky, the massive swinging blades are placed much more frequently, and there's even the occasional giant spider that comes down to function as a jump pad for these massive pits. These levels are so utterly charming and you've got to love the music, it's so mischievous. 9 out of 10, I'll darkness your fumble any day. Oh bloody hell, we actually did it. We've looked at every single level in the entire game in pointless detail because this is the internet and we could do what we like. I won't waste more of your time by prattling on, but I just want to thank you for watching this lengthy video. If you're still watching, leave me a comment and let me know, but don't tell the others, it'll be our secret. If any of you kind souls want to help me out a whole ton, you can leave a like on this video or maybe even subscribe. Go on, you know you want to. One final thing before I wrap up, a massive thank you to my one and only patron on Patreon, Alexia. Ta-da! If anyone wants to join these legendary ranks, I'll be tremendously grateful and one step closer to doing this thing full time. The link is in the description. Thanks again, I'm off to find my coffee IV drip. I know it's around here somewhere. Bye for now.